Good morning, everyone. My name is Chris Davidson. I'm the Business Development Manager here at CDW. I'd like to thank you all for taking the time out of your busy schedules to join our first webinar with Splunk around operational intelligence. From the Splunk team, we have Jason and Chad. Give you a bit of history on both. Jason is the Splunk sales engineer, and he's based in Toronto. He helps customers in financial services, telecommunications, and government sectors attain operational intelligence from their machine data using Splunk. Prior to Splunk, Jason worked at IBM, OpenText, and various other startups in both pre-sales and professional services roles. Jason has an electrical engineering degree from Queen's University and began the first decade of his career in research and development roles at Nortel Networks. Chad recently joined Splunk as a partner manager in January. He has held previous channel roles with BlackBerry, Microsoft, and Oracle. Chad's role is to help enable CDW with the tools and resources needed to go to market with a full solution around operational intelligence. Without further ado, I'd like to pass the webinar along to Jason and Chad.
Thank you very much. This is Jason Ramazas. Since I'm going to be doing most of the speaking, Chad, is there anything you want to say before I kick this off?
Nope. Just want to thank everyone again, like Chris said, for their time, and I will let you take it from here. Thanks, Jason.
Okay, so I will not be monitoring any comments. Chad, can you monitor in case there are any questions, or if anyone can't hear me, or are there any issues seeing the screen?
Yes, we'll have the team do that for sure. Appreciate it.
So right now you should be seeing an agenda slide. So how can we use machine data to meet and exceed our customer expectations? Well, there are a whole bunch of items listed here, but I want to take you to the three things that I would say I spend most of my time on. And number one, the customer expects you to protect their data. So how can we use machine data to make sure that their data is safe? Okay, the second is we expect that when I go to a service, it's available. When I log into my brokerage account or my banking account, when I wish to interact with the digital channel of the vendor I'm doing business with, I expect it to be available, that there's no downtime. And the next part is a 360-degree visibility into how my business is performing. How is my business going right now in real time? So this is the dollars and cents, the customer satisfaction, etc. How can I get this from my machine data? And those are kind of the three things I'm going to focus on today, not so much on the protection of the data, but on how we minimize and understand what's going on in our infrastructure and how we get that 360-degree view of our business. Okay? Now, so the machine data is there, but why is this challenge a challenge? Well, the thing about machine data is it's coming in real time. So right now, as we are all logged on into the system, WebEx is an app, and they are also a customer. As we're logged into the system, all kinds of logs are being generated, events are being generated through the entire stack of the application. And it's coming out in real time. It's unpredictable. It's in different formats. It's basically text. In order to do what I've just described requires massive scale. We have petabyte-a-day customers at Splunk. In Canada, we have many above 10 in the tens of terabytes a day of data. And that requires massive scale. At the same time, what are the questions we're going to ask? How do I get that insight for both keeping my infrastructure running, keeping the bad guys out, and giving me that 360-degree view of my customer? So those are the challenges. Our mission at Splunk, and basically what I do every day when I get up, is we actually make machine data accessible, usable, and keyword valuable to everyone. So for the sysadmin, for the security analyst, for the business analyst, for the CEO, for the chief revenue officer, everyone in the corporation. Okay? So how do you turn machine data into answers? Well, what does machine data, first of all, look like? Well, what you can see is, it can come from our order processing machine. It can come from the logs in a mid-tier, like a J2E app running on WebSphere, for example. There's machine data in Twitter. What you can do, though, is tie all these together and see a view of what's going on with your customer by bringing all these different sources in real time into Splunk, and by then asking the right questions. And that's essentially what we're going to do today. So who can benefit from Splunk? Well, basically everyone across your organization. So in IT operations we can use for application performance and analytics, for security and compliance, for business analytics, and of course emerging now, the Internet of Things. Okay? So, what can Splunk bring to you? Well, on a single platform, we run on Windows, we run in the cloud, we run on Linux. A single platform, we can give you all this with the many different lenses I just described for you. An IT lens, a operations lens, a business lens, a security lens. We can perform at scale. We run on single servers for small customers, and we run across entire data centers for large customers. We can scale. It's the exact same architecture, the exact same software that can scale up. We have an open ecosystem, and this is the key thing of getting time to value with Splunk. We partner with various technology vendors, Cisco, AppDynamics, FireEye, so that you can actually plug in for different technologies and use cases for free, so you can get value out of their data right out of the box, so you don't have to build it yourself. Another thing, too, is we run in the cloud. You can consume Splunk as a cloud service. You can deploy us in Google Cloud Platform, AWS, Azure. You can run us in a hybrid architecture, where you run some of Splunk on-prem, some of it in the cloud. We can do both. And another part that's really emerging, and we'll touch upon it today, is machine learning. The biggest challenge now with Splunk, we can bring in the data. We can look at the data. We can view the data. There are just not enough eyeballs in the world to go look at all the data that's available and that we can bring sense to. By using machine learning, we can do predictive analytics. We can also look for anomalies and then draw attention to those and have users leverage the machine learning to know what to look at. Okay. Right now, I would say I think it's about 80 of the Fortune 100 companies use Splunk. We have over 14,000 customers worldwide. We're publicly traded, so you can check everything I'm telling you about the company. And our revenue has now exceeded over $1 billion a year. Across Canada, most major corporations, I know in Toronto all the banks use us, some largely, some more at the departmental level. All the telecoms use us. We're across government. We're in manufacturing. You pretty well can find Splunk everywhere in the industry. And where does this bring us in with IT folks? Well, this is quite the complexity if you think of modern IT, and it's even getting greater. So when I started 30 years ago, God, it seems like yesterday, IT to me was a mainframe. I had a big IBM 3270, I think it was called, terminal on my desktop. I would write my code using a very simple editor on the green screen there. I would compile it. I would then download it, and I would run it in a lab. So to me, there was IT was a mainframe, and then a link to the lab so I could download my code and test it. And then there was an app where if my code worked, I could check it in for the nightly load build. And that was the complexity of IT back then. Well, let's think about now what is happening with IT. Well, we have infrastructure, so you can see at the bottom of our screen here. We have servers, we have storage, we have networking. And then we have apps. Well, what are these apps running in? Well, they could be running in the operating system. They could be running on a VM. They could be on a hypervisor or part of a guest OS. Okay, and then what apps are we running? Well, we have their infrastructure apps. We might have package apps like ERP, email, etc. We might have custom apps that we've developed ourselves. And now we have a third thing happening with either infrastructure as a service, where maybe we're not running on-prem. We're getting our infrastructure from a cloud vendor, or maybe we're using full on SaaS. So we're consuming services like Salesforce, etc. Okay? And then this slide, it still doesn't cover all the complexities. I have some customers now using Kubernetes, which allows you to define microservices, which you can, from the developer's perspective, can be deployed anywhere. They can be deployed in the cloud. They can be deployed on-prem. They can be deployed across different containers. Docker's also bringing that. So the point I'm trying to get to, and of course, if I remember before, I said how I was always accessing my data through my IBM 3270 terminal. Well, today it could be a laptop, it could be a phone, it could be an iPad, and it may even be something that the company doesn't own. So with your bring your own technology or bring your own device. So what this does is it increases the complexity of what makes up an IT solution. And when it comes to offering, that kind of excellent service for the end user, be it a customer, being it your own employees, being it a partner, and ensuring quality, then when something breaks, figuring it out, or figuring it out before it breaks, well, the complexity is far greater. Okay? And the challenges that our customers are having is they have solutions, but they're all silo-based. They're specific to one part of that fact that I showed you. They're disconnected in their point solutions. And what we find is when errors happen, and usually it's a reactive thing, the problem resolution is a brute force thing, as in a emergency call. This is what happens with a lot of my bank customers, and perhaps it's no different for you. A phone call goes off, everyone comes into a war room, everyone starts saying, is it you, is it you, is it you? And then eventually, through brute force, going through log files, different sources, different of these pile of solutions. And what happens is, I don't know where this number comes from, but if you talk to them, they spend more time maintaining the system, trying to keep it going, fixing things, than innovating. And that's not valuable. So, how is Splunk different? Well, I showed you some examples of what that machine data is, and I explained to you the different sources of machine data. So if you look to the left of the screen, you will see all kinds of sources that are emitting machine data. And this could be a log that's written to file. It could be data that's on a wire. It could be something that, events that are going on an event bus, which could be an enterprise server bus, or maybe you're using something cool like Kafka. A lot of big Kafka customers now. But it's just data, events, something with a timestamp. It's in some sort of text format, and it's coming at volume, and it's coming from different sources through different means. What Splunk is able to do is index that in real time. So we're getting all these different sources, and we understand it. We understand it so you can answer the questions that you see in the top right. I can run ad hoc searches. I can monitor for different conditions, and if they happen, I can generate alerts. And those alerts can be an email, they can be opening a ticket, they can be lighting up a board. I can build reports and analysis. These reports can also be exported to existing parts of your infrastructure, the reporting systems. I can build custom dashboards, and Splunk also has a developer platform. Everything in Splunk is exposed through a RESTful API, so you can actually interact with your other systems directly into Splunk. We also have an SDK in 7 different languages, So what this means, if you're developing applications, you need to extend them across Splunk, you can do that. All right. So at this point, I'm going to take a break. Chad, were there any questions so far?
Nope, none so far.
All right, so I'm just going to keep going. But by all means, if you have any questions, please put them in. You're monitoring, Chad, right?
That is correct, yes.
All right, so just put them in there, and Chad will get me to answer them for you. Okay, so some things about Splunk. Splunk is a self-contained solution. We don't use actually any third-party software. There's no back-end database. We run in a single process space. We index everything based on time. So we can correlate all the different data that you have because we use time as our way of indexing everything we have. And we do our schema at read. We call that schema on the fly. So schema is the way you interpret data. With Splunk, we don't need to interpret the data as we index it. We just need to know the time, where it came from, when the end of the record is, and that's good enough for us. What this means is we can modify the lens that we look at the data at read time. This gives you incredible flexibility. Okay? So if you think about it, I could index 6 months worth of data, change my mind on how I want to see that data, and I can apply that change at read time. I don't have to re-index the data. And because we can scale, like I said, we have a customer, we one in the States, is over a petabyte a day. There's no need to filter data if you don't wish to. Other solutions, people have to make hard decisions because they reach limits. Splunk has no limit. So, as I mentioned before with our open ecosystem, with Splunk, you're not starting from scratch. We have well over 1,000 apps that are on our app store. It's called splunkbase.splunk.com that are available to you for free. And what these allow you to do is extend the capabilities of Splunk using different technologies. Let me pick, I'll say, Active Directory, or say, for example, NetApp or Cisco. Where if you have Cisco data in your data center that you want to bring into Splunk, you don't have to develop that from scratch. There's a simple app, you install it, and you're getting value out of that data immediately. This is an important part of the time to value with Splunk. That's important for bringing data in. We also, with Splunk, have ways of interacting with live systems. So, for example, in application performance monitoring, we can work directly with your Dynatrace, your New Relic, etc., bringing that data in real time. We can also notify external systems. So, for example, if part of your process, whenever an error happens, is to open a ticket in ServiceNow, we can do that directly with Splunk. I'm just picking ServiceNow as an example. There are actually dozens of apps that we have for notification services where we can now take an action that happened in Splunk and through a notification channel take action in another system, like Remedy or Nagios, etc. Okay? Our focus today will be on application delivery and IT operations. That said, a lot of our, and this was touched upon at the beginning, a lot of the work we do is in security and fraud, auditing, compliance, etc., business analytics, and the fastest growing part of the machine data world, the Internet of Things and industrial data. We won't talk about those today. Again, happy to come back. Reach out to your CDW rep. We're happy to come back and talk more about those other use cases, if you wish. Okay, at this time, if there aren't any questions, I'm going to do a little demo to kind of support some of the things that I showed. Okay. And I'm going to open this up. Okay, so Chad, just to confirm, can you guys see my screen where you see a bunch of data coming?
We can, yes.
Excellent. So, what does machine data look? Well, actually, I'm logged into a system right now, And what you see, this is what machine data looks like in the real world. It's coming in, it's different types of formats, there's different types of data. It's coming in like a fire hose. My largest customer that I work with in Canada has approximately 12 terabytes a day. So imagine 12 terabytes from, I think they have about 50 or 60 different source types, data types, coming in all at once. So this is what it looks like. All right? But with Splunk, what we can do is get to a view like this, where here I have an example of a web store. So think of a three-tier e-commerce application. I've got a web layer, got a middleware layer, maybe it's a bunch of app servers like Apache or Tomcat or maybe WebSphere, and then a back-end database, maybe Oracle, could be MySQL, etc. And I have customers, and I'm selling things. So with all that data, look what I've done here. I am able to get a view as to what's going on. I can see here I'm choosing a bunch of different times. So over the last 60 minutes, I can see from all this data using the power of Splunk that I have had 66 errors. I can see my average request time. I can be bringing in things from New Relic to see what the average user response time is. I can see my performance by tier. And again, this is another thing that's important in Splunk. We can give you the aggregate view. We can also break down the view with different lenses. So if I have an incident, I can at a customer level. Is that because of my web layer? Is that because of my middleware layer? Is that because of my database layer? Well, this will allow me to zoom in. And what you can see here is I can correlate or compare yesterday's average response time, and I can overlay that with what's actually happening right now. So I can see that a lot of my request times are actually not as good as yesterday. So that's probably something I can look. Okay? I can start looking at different statuses and how they're going. And then another thing, too, is not only can I get counts, but I can get these wonderful little things called spark lines. So it's one thing to have a number like, hey, in the last hour, I had 82 errors. So I go over the 401 status code here. But hey, isn't it kind of cool to be able to see what that pattern looked like? Did they all happen at once? Is it something happening over different periods of time, etc.? So this gives me a view into what my health is. I'm going to show you a couple more of these. I can also look at other types of data that's happening. So I have a mobile channel, and again, I can look at my response times and see how things are going, etc. But I can get other kinds of analytics. So here, using our Mint, I can find out what type of devices my end users on the mobile channel are connecting to me. I can see what carriers they're coming from, what versions of a particular app that I have that they're running with. Okay? And I can get all kinds of different types of metrics from that as well. Okay? So here I'm giving you information of what's running out, but what's really going on with my consumer? I would like to get that, we talked about the infrastructure, I can see what's going on, but what is also happening with my consumer? I want to know what they're doing in my system in real time. Traditionally, when I ask a customer what is going on with their consumer, they'll tell me something like, this is very common, maybe it happens with you too, that, we run batch reports, and then we find out we run them overnight, we found out what happened the day before. But with Splunk, what I can do is I can get a view into my data of what's happening in real time. So I can find out right now, and I can even make this even more finite, like last 15 minutes, I can even get to real time if I wanted to. So how many successful purchases did I have in the last 60 minutes? What is my total revenue in the last 60 minutes? Okay? What kind of products by revenue did I get? Using machine learning, I can make projections into the future. This is the upper bound, the lower bound, and the predicted value. What are my predictions for future revenue? Okay. This prediction capability can also be used in an IT operations sense, where I can predict storage usage, CPU. I can also look for anomalies in different types of behavior. These are built-in machine learning functions that we have in Splunk. With doing a GeoIP lookup, I can also, here, make this a little smaller, I can also get statistical data across geography. So I can see where my customers are coming from, and given where they're coming from, what particular products are they purchasing. Okay? And I can get other metrics from my customer to determine the thing. All right? Are there any questions so far with what I've shown?
There's no question. Which one? There's question.
Nothing currently.
Nothing.
Okay. Okay. So you might say, hey, this is all great, but how do you get to this? Well, I'm going to show you a little bit of the magic of Splunk. We're going to, and for those of you who are not technical, that's okay. The kind of skill set that a Splunk power, so the thing about Splunk, and this is an important point to get, is in most of my customers, there will be, like in some of the banks, there are hundreds, if not up to 1,000 users using Splunk. And they don't actually have to know how to build these dashboards. These dashboards are built by what we call power users. And our power users are people that usually take up to maybe a week of training. And the skill set is your typical sysadmin, SOC analyst, someone who knows, is comfortable with scripting or with the command line in Linux or Windows, etc. Okay, you're like a Visual Basic programmer, web developers, etc. So it's not a demanding skill set. But the thing is, not everyone who uses Splunk needs to know how to use our what we call Splunk SPL, for our command function. But I'm just going to show you a little bit of some of the magic of Splunk. Okay? So with Splunk...
Hey, Jason, there was just one question, so I just want to jump in so I didn't want to lose thought for the customer. So the question was, is it something that's customizable, or is it out-of-the-box plugins?
Okay, excellent question. So I don't have time to show it today, but with a lot of the vendors that I mentioned before in the slides, like Cisco and FireEye and New Relic, we actually come with pre-built dashboards that you can use. For example, for Windows infrastructure, there's an app developed by Splunk that comes with hundreds of dashboards of what I've just shown you that you can then tweak if you wish. You can clone them, you can do different things. So there is pre-built that's available from different vendors, and then you can either extend those or build your own. Okay?
Right, and the time to build your own, I guess, can vary as well?
It can, but it's not as complicated as you think. In fact, I'm going to build some in the next 10 minutes. And I don't mean this to be a tutorial, as in this is how you build Splunk. I just wanted to use a bit of hands-on to just show you some of the concepts and to show you how simple it is. Okay? So, with every Splunk instance there is, you come with the searching and reporting app. App is how we package things. And basically it's like a toolbar, and I can do anything I like that's like in like Google. So I can type in words. I can type in the word error, and it's going to do a free-form search. And what you'll see is it gives me a histogram. These are all the events that came in the last 60 minutes where a free-form search of the word error returned something. And these are the actual events themselves. And here it also shows me an aggregate. So based on different field names, I can find out what how many of each type there were. So in terms of host, there were 2 different machines that had the word error, and 2 different source types. What a source type is a data type, and that's how Splunk basically keeps track of the different formats of data so we know how to interpret them. Okay? So one kind of source type, I can do a search like this. I'm going to pick a simple one because it's probably familiar to our web logs, so Apache access logs. So if I type in source type equals Apache access, what Splunk is going to do for the last 60 minutes is return to me every single log or web log of this type. Okay? And you see here, again, the histogram, how many I got, and I can zoom in, zoom out. But what I want to show you now, and please pay close attention to this, is the magic of Splunk. So here you will see at this particular time, I have this one event. This is the actual log. This is the log as it was written by the system. So if this was a log written by a custom application that your company developed, this is exactly how it would be written. When Splunk brings in your data, we never alter it. In fact, we have a feature now where we can digitally sign your events so that they're non-repudiatable. So you can actually say, hey, this actually happened at this time. There's a digital signature. Nobody tampered with it. We will never touch your data. We store it in what we call the raw form. But what Splunk can do at read time is we can index your data. And this is where we extract all the different fields and their values. Okay? So here you can see I have this log, which is kind of hard to read, but now I can actually get information from it. So for here I can see, the action was add. I can see what the session ID was, that this was a post. I can see what the destination was. I can look down here and I can see the status. It was 200. I can see the source IP, what site it came from. All this is extracted from Splunk, and this is our magic. But we can take it even further. We can add context at read time. So for example, here, there is in the, you could see I actually have a product name, okay? And then you might say to yourself, so the person was adding oh God, you can't even make this up, a Man Candle beer, okay? And you might say to yourself, hey, was Man Candle beer in the actual, actually it was. Okay, I should have been more careful in picking that up. But what we can do in Splunk is we can do what are called lookups. Now, I'll give you an example. I had a customer who had Palo Alto logs. So they're able to see from the logs what a user ID was, what users were doing in terms of the amount of bandwidth an individual user was bringing in every day. But the customer needs to know, I need to do reports on the bandwidth consumed by each department. Well, what we did, and this is something you can do, it's called an automatic lookup in Splunk, is we went to Active Directory and for the user ID, looked up what the department was. And then this allowed us to build a report on the monthly usage of bandwidth by department, because then we could sum it up for each department. Okay, and that's what a lookup allows us to do. So I apologize. In the previous demo I did, there was a product ID and they did a lookup to get the product name, but here I see they actually pull it out of the logs itself. Okay, but if I didn't have that ID, I could do a lookup into a product database and pull that in. Okay, but there is something that is here. For example, you'll see price, so that this Man Candle beer costs $12.70, but that is not in this particular log. So that's done through a lookup. And the lookup is a very simple thing to do. All right. So let's just show some very simple commands. And I'm going to show you just a couple. So the first one I'm going to do is a top status. And what this allows me to do is now I can see what kind of statuses I'm getting. So I'm getting 200s, but I'm also getting errors. And I could build that into a visualization. For example, I could make that into a pie chart. Okay? And I could save that, if I wish, as a dashboard panel. All right? So these are the types of things I can do. So that's how I went from, you know, those nice diagrams you saw. It's these simple commands that I use in Splunk. Okay? Let's take another look at some other logs. So, for example, we saw there was a whole bunch of Mint network logs. These are the logs that are giving me analytics for my mobile app. And if I look down here, I can see that I get, so these are by different types of things. I can see I'm getting different status codes, 200, 201s. Okay? And it's also, I'm finding out what my different app versions are. Okay? So it would be nice to know, one thing I could do, another command I can do, just check this one out here. I can do a chart command and say I want to find out what the statuses are by the app versions. So I could do a chart count over app, oops, I spelled over right, app version name by status. Okay? And what this is showing me, this is just an example of troubleshooting when you can now do analytics. So, customers are calling up and saying, hey, I can't work with my app. Okay? But you test it out and it's working for you, and other people say it's working for them. But think again, remember my diagram with all the different permutations and combinations of an IT infrastructure? Well, here what we're doing is we're looking at the 200s and the 401s, and you can see that version 6 of the app is giving us these errors, where the other ones, everything is okay. And that's an example of using statistical analysis. We got all these logs coming in to actually find out what it is, the specific thing. Okay? And then the last thing I wanted to show you, because I did show you that 360-degree view, is, hey, how did we find out what was going on in real time with revenue? So again, back to my my Apache Access logs. Okay? I'm going to show you where I could do a time chart by the hour. So I want to know what my revenue is. Okay? Well, what I can do is I could say, hey, for each hour, I'm going to do this over 24 hours. I'll change that.
We talked for an hour on that question.
I'm going to sum up the price. And remember, I'm getting the price from that lookup, right? Okay? By product name. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to do that over the last 24 hours. And you'll see here I'm starting to get now for my different products for each hour. And again, I can visualize this. Pie chart doesn't make sense. I can put that into a stack chart. And there you go. So now I'm getting insight. So I could see for each hour how much revenue I'm getting. Okay, and again, that comes from that lookup. Okay, and then this I could also now save this to a dashboard. So just like the other dashboards I was showing you with revenue, I could do this. Final thing I want to show you is if I'm concerned about HTTP errors, say I have an SLA for HTTP errors. Well, they can't be 200s. I can do a stats count. Okay, and then it's going to give me back a number. So you see it's 2,180. Say I want to do this by the hour. So I got 71 in the last hours. I could save this now as an alert. And what I can do is I could say I could call this HTTP errors. So say I have an SLA, okay? And so I want my number of results. If it's greater than 100, I want to be notified, okay? And what the action could be? Well, I could log an event. I could send an email. I could run a script. I could do a webhook. If I installed the ServiceNow app, there'd be a ServiceNow plug-in here where I could have it open a ticket in ServiceNow. So I'm now getting to a proactive state, okay? And this is now getting to the next step in Splunk, where I don't wait things to break. I actually use Splunk to look for things and then notify me, okay? And I can also update it in an external system, okay? And that's where you get to the next level of Splunk. All right, so I want to conclude now with just a couple of the points that I brought up. And this is actually the most satisfying part of my job, I would have to say, is that if you saw what I just did, we're able to isolate and identify errors in our infrastructure more quickly. And there's nothing greater when customers tell me that, you know, our mean time to identify and our mean time to respond to incidents is significantly lowered. And when we do that, of course, we're now reducing end user experience. And of course, that's going to improve end user experience. We can reduce costs because we can monitor what's going on in our infrastructure, have less downtime, get better performance out of our infrastructure. And the result, of course, is greater IT productivity. And the part that the people at the end love is we take them from, you know, going around, grepping through logs, trying to manually correlate different events, and we're able to deliver end-to-end correlation for them. Okay? But there is more. And this is the trick of operational intelligence, where we start out first by searching and investigating, but then as we get more mature, we're now proactively monitoring and alerting for different conditions. We get operational visibility. We can see what's going on in our infrastructure in real time. And then finally, we're getting real-time business insight. Okay? We could launch a web campaign and see in real time what the revenue difference is from that. We can do A/B testing in real time and get a view of what's going on in our business. And the result is we go from a reactive IT organization into a proactive one. Okay? So, at this point, I'd like to switch it back to the CDW folks and talk about next steps.
Thank you very much.
And take on any questions if there are any.
Yeah, I'll do the call to action and we'll review any questions that we may have gotten throughout the webinar. Thanks again for your time, everybody. The last slide is our call to action. So it's hard to cover everything that Splunk can offer and the capabilities in 1 hour-long webinar. It is a really great platform. So our call to action to everybody on the phone, customer-wise, would be to reach out to your CDW account managers and just have that question of how we can benefit your organization. I think due to the Splunk platform, there's a lot of different options, and again, it's hard to cover everything in 1 hour-long quick webinar. So we do house calls, CDW and Splunk. We will come and do any kind of presentations and demos specifically tied to your needs or any questions you may have, as well as hands-on workshops, lunch and learns on a variety of various Splunk topics. Should you want that tailored to your specific organization and your needs, we're happy to do that. And then again, we're just going to explore how Splunk can bring value to your organization. Obviously, you will engage with CDW and our PS teams to leverage and help you and your application and use case development for your Splunk instance. Again, the goal is to gain clear visibility of your infrastructure through customized alerts, dashboards, and reports. Without further ado, I think we did get one question, but I think this one kind of ties back into what I was saying about us coming in and kind of tailoring this more towards your specific needs. We did get a question, how can Lowe's leverage the platform? Which is maybe the meanest question I've ever heard, because I'm sure there's a variety of different ways that Lowe's could potentially leverage the Splunk platform. But Jason, I don't know if you want to jump on that. Chad, if there's, I think logically the next step would be probably a face-to-face meeting just to get their needs and where they are. But high level, did you want to kind of cover that one?
Well, yeah, the typically what I would ask a customer is, I mean, you know, there's three basic silos for Splunk. I mean, and we could go across all three, but Are we looking at, do you have a security use case? Is this for IT operations, or is this for application management / DevOps? Okay, so it'd be an understanding of where it is you're looking to improve your IT operations. Okay, and so typically what we do is before we come in, and this is to me how we could ideally, if we're going to ask for an hour of your time, what it'll ask for is like a 5-minute or 10-minute phone call where we have a quick discussion, understand what your infrastructure looks like, what your challenges are, and then we'll come with a presentation and demo very much tailored for that. And if you have specific, either business initiatives or IT goals, we'd love to understand what they are, and we can talk directly to those. Okay? Today was very generic. We wanted to give you the basic concepts of Splunk so you can understand what machine data is, how we can interpret it very quickly in Splunk, and how we can start giving you insight. Okay, but I would love to follow up with the Lowe's folks with CDW and find out something more specific, and then how we could help you.
Yeah, this is Chad. So there was a couple other questions I'll ask you here, Jason, as well. So there was one question of, and I think you probably answered that actually as part of the presentation, but the one was, how many different source types are there? Some examples were database files, flat files. Could you comment on that?
So the answer is actually infinite. So we have in Splunk, there are 80 types that come with Splunk out of the box. And those tend to be well-known formats, JSON, XML, CSV, or certain types of standards, log4j, Apache logs, etc., where there's an international format. Then different vendors have their own source types. They have formats for their data. Well, if you bring in the Splunk apps, not only do they give you visualization, but they define source types so their data comes in. I'll give you an example. We had a customer who was writing Perl scripts to try and understand iron port logs, which are very complex multi-line logs. And we came in and we just installed Splunk. We installed the iron port app. Cisco's since renamed, I can't even call it now. And boom, they were able, the whole thing was nicely parsed and that. But then you might have your own, legacy apps. I worked with some telecom logs with a vendor where stuff I hadn't seen since the early 90s, really ugly logs that were optimized for a dot matrix printer. And that took a bit of work, but we were able to parse that with Splunk. So the actual answer is infinite. And yes, we do mainframe logs. We have a partnership with IBM and a few other companies, and we're able to get data in that as well. Excellent question. Are there any more, Chad?
Yeah, one more. So there was another one around pre-built dashboards for Office 365. Do we have those?
There are some pre-built dashboards. There is an app for that. There is also some Windows apps. There are some Azure apps which tie into the Microsoft services. So there are some, yes, absolutely. So just very quickly, we talked a lot about apps that were very specific to infrastructure that's on-prem. That's actually an excellent question. There are now apps for Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform because we need to pull that data from different sources from those particular cloud vendors. Okay? And so we have apps that do that and bring that data in very quickly. And then we also have visualizations that allow you to actually see that. Okay, excellent question. And an important differentiation between infrastructure and cloud services. Okay.
Perfect. No, great. Thank you. So there were two other questions, but I think they'll take a little bit longer. So Alex and Noah, we will, with your CDW rep, we'll follow up with you guys on the two outstanding questions that you guys have. I think they're a bit longer discussion. So appreciate that, though, and we will get back to you. So I guess without further ado, again, on behalf of Splunk and CDW, please do reach out to your CDW account manager. We appreciate your time and would love to have a further conversation with each and every one of you. So again, thank you.
And thank you very much, CDW, for allowing us to present today. People like Chad and myself, we love Splunk, and we'd love to come talk to you about your machine data. So please, through CDW, give us a call.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.